Everybody comes to Hollywood. They're gonna make it in the neighborhood. Been singing that as I watched it. Like the smell of it in Hollywood. Oh, hello, Herstory gang, and how are you? It's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a little while. How are we all doing with the pandemic and life in general? How are we all doing? Good? I haven't posted for a while. Apologies for that. I lost somebody, family member, someone I loved very, very dearly to the virus, and I've also been taking some time off and having some EMDR therapy for past trauma, that something that happened many years ago. So yeah, really been focusing on improving my mental health this year, and that's always a good thing. But I am back and I am here because I watched Netflix's Hollywood and I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I wanted to go over it with you guys and do a Historian Reacts. So here we go. This is going to be a very long video because what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down not the events as they happen in order, because obviously it's a completely fictional story. So what I'm going to do is talk about the people in the series and the characters in the series, who they're based on in real life and everything like that. So what I will do is I will put names and timestamps in the description box for you below, so you can flick through and just watch who you want to watch, or you can stick with me and watch the whole thing. It's completely up to you. So without further ado, Hollywood. I wrote this script some time ago, so director Janet Mock said, "We turned to the past for direction, uncovering buried history to spin an aspirational tale of what ifs. What if a band of outsiders were given the chance to tell their story? What if the person with green light power was a woman? The screenwriter a black man? What if the heroine was a woman of colour? If the matinee idol was openly gay?" And Ryan Murphy said, "I wanted to give some people who were dealt a terrible hand by Hollywood a happy ending." So, as said before, it is a Ryan Murphy drama from the creator of American Horror Story, Glee, the wonderful Pose, Feud, and Ratchet, which I have to watch. I need to, and as said before, it's a what if version of it's the place and time in which it's set. So the show's plot and many of the characters are fictional, but the backdrop, attitudes of the time, and some of the characters are very real, based on some real people. The series is very loosely based on the recollections of Scott Bowers, a young ex-Marine who owned a gas station in Hollywood in the 1940s. And he is played by Dylan McDermott and is named Ernie in the series. The real Scott Bowers was famous for arranging meetings or hookups for the biggest stars in Tinseltown, including secret hookups for actors of the same sex, and we'll talk about him in a lot more detail later. So the fictional characters in the series that we will not really be talking about in this video are the protagonist Jack Costello, as well as Archie Coleman, Camille Washington, and Claire Amberg. But let's talk about those who were real, including Rock Hudson, Henry Wilson, Hattie McDaniel, Anna May Wong, Scott Bowers aka Ernie, Vivien Leigh, Tallulah Bankhead, Peg Entwistle, Noel Coward, and George Cukor. So here we go with Rock Hudson. As I said, there's timestamps, names and timestamps below. You can skip to whoever you want, but Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson, born Roy Harold Shearer Jr., who also went by the name Roy Fitzgerald, we'll explain that later, was born on November the 17th, 1925 in Winnetka, Illinois. Hope I'm saying that right. He was a prominent heartthrob of the golden age of Hollywood and had a career spanning 4 decades. Was approximately in 70 films. He was an only child. Mother was Catherine Wood, a telephone operator, and Roy Shearer Sr. was dad, a mechanic. He was raised Roman Catholic. During the Great Depression, his father lost his job and abandoned the family completely. His mother remarried Wallace Fitzgerald in 1932, a former Marine Corps officer who Rock absolutely hated. He adopted his stepson without consent, changing his legal name to Roy Fitzgerald. He became interested in acting during his teens when he worked as an usher at a movie theatre. He graduated high school in 1943 and then enlisted in the US Navy during World War II. He was discharged and returned to San Francisco 3 years later, where he then moved to LA with his biological father, who had since remarried as well. After he sent talent scout Henry Wilson a photo of himself in 1947, Wilson took him on as a client and changed his name to Rock Hudson, making his film debut in 1948. It took him 38 takes to successfully deliver his only line in the film Fighter Squadron. He went on to act alongside Elizabeth Taylor, Yvonne DiCarlo, James Dean, Julie Andrews, Doris Day, Kirk Douglas, John Wayne, and Mia Farrow. Hudson was known to be gay among those high up in Hollywood. In 1955, Confidential magazine threatened to publicly out him, which Henry Wilson fended off by trading gossip on 2 other prominent actors. Soon after, Hudson married Wilson's secretary, Phyllis Gates. She did genuinely love him and filed for divorce in April of 1958, citing mental cruelty. Hudson kept his sexuality a deep secret until his death, where he confessed to a priest whilst receiving last rites. Hudson had been living with HIV since June of 1984, continuing to work, smoke, and drink heavily. Only a year later, in July 1985, he could hide it no longer. He was clearly very ill and was among one of the first mainstream celebrities to have been diagnosed with AIDS. He died 3 months later on October the 2nd, 1985, at home in Beverly Hills, aged 57. He requested no funeral and had his ashes scattered at sea. After his death, his homosexuality was openly discussed, and over £1.8 million in private contributions were made to AIDS-related charities. Shortly after his death, Hudson also contributed $250,000 to help launch the Foundation of AIDS Research. How sad that he had to live his life as a lie, effectively, and go through with this charade of a marriage just to try and conform. And had he come out, he probably would have lost his Hollywood heartthrob status, which is really unfortunate. I can understand Ryan Murphy and the team wanting to create a what if scenario here. So let's move on to Henry Wilson, who's played by Jim Parsons, the agent of Rock Hudson. Henry Leroy Wilson was a Hollywood talent agent who played an enormous role in developing the beefcake craze of the 1950s. He was known for having many young, attractive clients, including Rock Hudson, Robert Wagner, Rory Calhoun, and Lana Turner on his books. He was born July 31st in 1911 in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania. His father, Horace, was president of the Columbia Phonograph Company, so Wilson rubbed shoulders with Broadway actors from a very young age. In 1933, he travelled to Hollywood on a steamship via the Panama Canal, where he struck up a friendship with Bing Crosby's wife, Dixie Lee, who introduced him to the Hollywood elite, and he got a job as a reporter. He moved into a Beverly Hills home, purchased by his father, and became a regular at Sunset Strip gay bars, where he actively wooed young men, both personally and professionally. After working for various talent agencies, Wilson opened his own in the mid-40s, where he nurtured the careers of his young protégés, frequently coercing them into sexual relationships in exchange for publicity and film roles. In his later years, Wilson struggled with alcoholism, drug addiction, paranoia, and weight issues. Because his homosexuality had become public knowledge, many of his clients distanced themselves from him. Rock Hudson, in fact, fired him in 1966. In 1974, the unemployed and destitute agent moved in to the motion picture and television country house and hospital, where he stayed until he died of cirrhosis of the liver on November the 2nd, 1978. With no money to cover the cost of a gravestone, he was interred in an unmarked grave in Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery in North Hollywood. A headstone was eventually placed at his burial site with the epitaph, "Star, Star Maker." Ryan Murphy said, "Henry Wilson was a real-life villain, a true sexual predator and an alcoholic who would take these young men from vulnerable backgrounds who came to Hollywood trying to make it and then sexually abuse them. He was a tormented gay man who preyed on tormented gay men. Weirdly, he was actually an okay manager who was friends with everyone and could get clients into rooms with power brokers." Sadly, however, Wilson's behaviour was not that unusual in the film industry at that time. The casting couch was everywhere. I think he was played brilliantly by Jim Parsons. I think the sleaziness and the despicableness of his behaviour is balanced with a psychological insight into his personality as well. And I think the quote by Ryan Murphy sums it up really well. He was a tormented gay man who preyed on tormented gay men. Yes, very sad. Now let's talk about Anna May Wong, played by Michelle Krusiek. Born Wong Lee Song, meaning Willow Frost, on January the 3rd, 1905 in LA, to Won Sam Singh and Lee Gontoy, who owned Sam Key Laundry? Can't read my writing. Sam Key Laundry. She was obsessed with movies and by the age of 11 had come up with her stage name of Anna May Wong. She began working as an extra and dropped out of high school in 1921 to pursue a full-time acting career, securing her first leading role only 1 year later, in The Toll of the Sea. Though recognised as an amazing actress, she struggled to get leading roles, always being cast as the dragon lady, the concubine, or the scheming Mongol slave, and other horrible stereotypes. It soon became clear that Wong's career would be limited by US anti-miscegenation laws, which prevented her from sharing an on-screen kiss with anyone of another race, even if it was an Asian character being portrayed by a white actor. So Wong continued to be pigeonholed into roles like the seductress and the indigenous nature girl. She was generally either the shy and naive butterfly or the sly and deceitful dragon lady. And she got thoroughly fed up, and rightly so. so she moved to Europe in 1928, where she was well received. However, her friendship with Marlene Dietrich led to rumours of lesbianism, which damaged her public reputation and embarrassed her family deeply. They had never supported her acting career as a respectable profession anyway, sadly. Wong was enticed back to the US by Paramount Studios in 1930 by the promise of top billing, where a sexually charged scene with Marlene Dietrich in Shanghai Express fanned the flames of the rumour mill further. Since its publication in 1931, it had been Anna's dream to play the role of Olan in the film version of The Good Earth. Everyone thought she was a complete shoo-in for the part, but MGM gave the part to a white actress, Louise Rayner, and Anna was instead offered the part of Lotus, a deceitful girl who destroys the family by seducing the oldest son. She refused that role. Rayner went on to win Best Actress Oscar, and MGM's decision has gone down as one of the most notorious cases of casting discrimination in the 1930s. Wong took herself off to China to be with her family. The toll of celebrity on her personal life manifested itself in bouts of depression and anger, as well as excessive smoking and drinking. In the late 30s, Anna completed her contract with Paramount with a string of B movies, which at least had slightly less stereotypical roles for her. Later in life, she invested in real estate and owned a number of Hollywood properties. In late 1953, Anna's health began to deteriorate when she suffered an internal hemorrhage alongside menopause, continued heavy drinking, and financial worries caused bouts of depression to become more frequent. On February the 3rd, 1961, aged 56, Anna died of a heart attack in her sleep at home in Santa Monica. Her ashes were interred in her mother's grave at Rosedale Cemetery. Anna helped to humanize Chinese Americans to white audiences during a period of intense racism and discrimination. She was proud of her heritage, politically vocal and outspoken about her disappointment in her stereotypical typecasting. Sadly, Hollywood the Show is as close as Anna ever came to winning the Oscar she so deserved. So now we're going to talk about Scotty Bowers, or Ernie West, as he is known in the series, played by Dylan McDermott. An LA legend who passed away only last year at the age of 96. His salacious memoir, Full Service, describes a prostitution ring that catered to the closeted stars of Hollywood, which Bowers did indeed run out of a gas station in Hollywood Boulevard. Cary Grant and Bette Davis were supposedly some of the numerous clients, as well as the Duke of Windsor and his wife, Wallis Simpson. Straight, gay or bi, male or female, young or old, whatever folks wanted, I had it, Bowers wrote. George Albert Scotty Bowers, born July the 1st, 1928 in Ottawa, Illinois, son of Edna and Glenn Bowers. After serving as a paramarine in World War II, Scotty began working in the sex industry in 1946 on Hollywood Boulevard, where he worked first as a party bartender before making his way up to the pimp of his gas station. He retired in the 80s, and in 1984 he married cabaret singer Lois Broad. Scotty died at his LA home on the 13th of October 2019 of kidney failure, aged 96. What a great guy for organising those experiences for people who were otherwise so closeted and limited. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't a perfect human by any means, but that service was available is quite nice, I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. George Cukor, played by Daniel London. Though he is not a prominent character in the series, the real-life director is actually weirdly crucial to the plot with his legendary house parties. Every Sunday he hosted afternoon pool parties that were unabashedly all-boy affairs. His home became a haven for other queer creatives like himself, who were whispered about in Hollywood but stayed in the closet publicly. But with George, they could be free. So he gets an honourable mention here. Now on to Tallulah Bankhead, played by Paget Brewster. In the series, she's the life and soul of the party, snorting cocaine, laughing hysterically and enjoying the attention of her many male admirers. The real Tallulah was well aware of her debaucherous reputation and unusually candid about her personal life, which likely contributed to her decline in work in the mid-30s, as morality clauses and censorship started to overtake the industry. Tallulah Brockman Bankhead was born on January 31st, 1902 in Huntsville, Alabama, to William and Adelaide Brockman Bankhead. Her father was the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives from 1936 to 1940. Her mother died only 3 weeks after her birth of sepsis, sending her father into a deep depression and alcoholism. So Tallulah and her sister Eugenia were raised by their grandmother in Alabama. The less attractive and more overweight sister, Tallulah did everything possible to get attention, cartwheeling around the house, singing, reciting literature, throwing tantrums, rolling around on the floor, holding her breath until she went blue in the face. Her grandmother often threw buckets of water on her to stop the outbursts. Even being sent to a convent school aged 10 did not tame Tallulah. At 15, she moved to New York's Algonquin Hotel, getting in with other artistic and literary types who introduced her to cocaine and women. She then went and did a few years on stage in London, and then in 1931, Tallulah moved back to Hollywood, where she began hosting parties that had no boundaries. Her first film, Tarnished Lady, was directed by George Cukor, and the two became fast friends. She found films dreadfully boring and soon returned to Broadway. In 1933, while performing in Jezebel, Tallulah nearly died following a 5-hour emergency hysterectomy due to gonorrhea. Weighing only 32 kilos when she left hospital, she vowed to continue her promiscuous party lifestyle, saying to her doctor, "Don't think this has taught me a lesson." She rose to stardom in Hitchcock's Lifeboat, and when accepting her New York Film Critics Circle Award for her role, said, "Darlings, I was wonderful." Her scandalous autobiography was released in 1952. However, her personal life began to undermine her reputation as an actress. Although a heavy drinker, smoker, consumer of sleeping pills, and with a penchant for cocaine, Tallulah continued to perform in the 50s and 60s on Broadway, radio, TV, and the occasional film. During this time, she began taking dangerous cocktails of drugs to fall asleep. And in her later years, Tallulah had several psychotic episodes and serious accidents due to sleep deprivation and hypnotic drug abuse. She also lapsed into depression whenever she was left alone. In 1964, aged 62, she began audibly suffering from breathing difficulties due to emphysema. On December the 12th, 1968, Tallulah died at St. Luke's Hospital in Manhattan, aged 66, from pleural double pneumonia, complicated by emphysema, malnutrition, and flu. Her last coherent words, reportedly, were a garbled request for codeine and bourbon. She was buried in St. Paul's Churchyard, Chestertown, Maryland. Famous catchphrases include, "I'm as pure as the driven slush," which is seen in the Hollywood series. Tallulah never used the term bisexual to describe herself, preferring to use the term ambisextrous instead. And she said, "If I had to live my life again, I'd make the same mistakes, only sooner." You can't help but have a certain amount of respect for Tallulah Bankhead, can you? Although, you know, she really played Russian roulette with her health and her life and everything. She lived fast, and yeah, certain respect for her there, absolutely. And now we're on to Vivien Leigh, who is played by Katie McGuinness. The Gone with the Wind star made a cameo at Cukor's party wearing a green dress stolen from Scarlett O'Hara's closet. And the show recreates a story about the actress almost word for word from Full Service, the book, where Bowers and Leigh share an intimate encounter at the party and where they discuss her mood swings, referring to Vivien's struggle with bipolar disorder, or manic depression as it was known back then. So she was born Vivien Mary Hartley on November the 9th, 1913 in Darjeeling, British India, the only child of Ernest Richard Hartley, a broker, and Gertrude Mary Frances. Aged 6, Vivien was sent to a convent school in London. In 1931, she enrolled at RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. The next year, aged 19, she married Lee Holman, a barrister, 13 years her senior, and in 1933 had daughter Suzanne. She took on the stage name Vivien Leigh and started working as an extra before securing a contract. In the autumn of 1935, Vivien met Laurence Olivier at the Savoy Grill, and the two, who were both married at the time, began an affair. They began living together in 1937 as their respective spouses refused to grant a divorce, and they kept their relationship a secret from the public. It was during this time that Vivien first began to experience both manic and depressive episodes, and she received her first behaviour warning on set. In February 1938, desperate to secure the part of Scarlett O'Hara in Cukor's Gone with the Wind, Vivien moved to LA. Olivier had moved over there a few months earlier to take the role of Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights. Cukor liked her incredible wildness, and she secured the role soon after. The film won 10 Academy Awards, including a Best Actress award for Vivien. In February 1940, Jill Esmond and Lee Holman agreed to divorce both Laurence and Vivien, respectively. Holman was granted custody of daughter Suzanne. On the 31st of August 1940, Olivier and Leigh married in Santa Barbara, California, with Katharine Hepburn as one of their witnesses. In March 1943, the Oliviers returned to Britain to help with the war effort. Vivien toured North Africa, performing for troops, before falling ill with a persistent cough and fevers. In 1944, she was diagnosed as having tuberculosis in her left lung. The following year, in 1945, Vivien was filming Caesar and Cleopatra when she suffered a miscarriage. Vivien then fell into a deep depression that hit its lowest ebb when she fell to the floor, sobbing in a hysterical fit. This was the first of many major bipolar disorder breakdowns. Vivien later came to realise the symptoms of an impending episode. There would be several days of hyperactivity, followed by a period of depression, and then an explosive breakdown, after which Vivien would have no memory of the event, but would feel very embarrassed and remorseful. In 1947, Laurence Olivier was knighted, and in turn Vivien became Lady Olivier. In 1948, on a tour of Australia, the pair began bickering, culminating in an exchange of slaps in Christchurch, New Zealand. Vivien was plagued with insomnia, and Laurence would later observe that he lost Vivien in Australia. In 1951, Vivien returned to Hollywood to film A Streetcar Named Desire, which won her a second Best Actress Oscar and a BAFTA for Best British Actress, and a Golden Globe as well, I think. In 1958, Vivien suffered another miscarriage and entered a period of depression that lasted for months. In 1970, the pair divorced. Vivien had already been dating actor Jack Merivale for 2 years by this point, and Lawrence also quickly remarried. Jack proved a very stabilising influence on Vivien, and ex-husband Lee Holman was also often on hand to comfort her as a friend. So, though she was still beset by bursts of depression, she continued to work, tour and win awards. Her last screen performance was Ship of Fools in 1956. Vivien was tainted by paranoia and resulted in outbursts that marred her relationship with the other actors. In one attempted rape scene, Vivien became so distraught she hit co-star Lee Marvin so hard with a spiked shoe that it marked his face. In 1967, her tuberculosis resurfaced, and on the night of July 7th, 1967, Jack left her to go perform in a play and returned home at midnight to find her asleep. Only 30 minutes later, now into the 8th of July, he entered the bedroom and found her body on the floor. She'd been attempting to walk to the bathroom, and as her lungs filled with liquid, she collapsed and suffocated. Her death was publicly announced on the 8th of July, and the lights of every theatre in central London were extinguished for 1 hour. Her ashes were scattered on the lake near her summer house of Tickeridge Mill near Blackboys, East Sussex. So now we're on to Noel Coward, who's played by Billy Boyd. Another minor character who we meet at one of Cukor's parties. Coward was in fact an astonishingly prolific writer, actor, composer, playwright and performer. Over the course of his life, he wrote over 35 plays and musicals. Producers in Britain and Hollywood began buying up his comedies in the silent era, but not content to sign away his rights, he worked as a producer, screenwriter and actor on both sides of the pond. In full service, Bowers claims Coward was a frequent customer and a noted guest at Cukor's pool parties. That's all we'll say about that. And now we're going to talk about Hattie McDaniel, played by Queen Latifah. When we meet Hattie in Hollywood, she's enjoying a home-cooked breakfast prepared by one of the gas station attendants. Tallulah saunters in and gives Hattie a quick peck on the lips, and this scene nods to Hattie's rumoured bisexuality, as well as age-old gossip about what exactly Tallulah meant when she called Hattie her best friend. But the scene that steals the show is the real, true moment that defined Hattie's career and maybe even her life. Her 1940 Oscar for Gone with the Wind. Born June 10th, 1893 in Wichita, Kansas, to Susan Holbert, a gospel singer, and Henry McDaniel, a soldier in the American Civil War. Hattie was the youngest of 13 children and the granddaughter of a slave. In 1900, the family moved to Colorado, where Hattie worked with her brother Otis, writing songs for a minstrel show. Hattie and her sister Etta launched an all-female minstrel show in 1914 called the McDaniel Sisters Company. From 1916, Hattie continued in music, recording 16 blues sides for various record labels until the stock market crash of 1929, when she was forced to find work as a washroom attendant near Milwaukee at Club Madrid. Despite the owner's reluctance, she was soon allowed to take the stage and become a regular performer. In 1931, she moved to LA to join her siblings, Sam, Etta, and Orlena. When she couldn't get film work, she took jobs as a maid or a cook. Her first film appearance was in 1932, The Golden West, where she played a maid. In 1934, she joined the Screen Actors Guild and began to attract attention. Almost all of her roles were the sassy, opinionated maid, and she began to attract criticism from the black community for accepting stereotypical roles. White Southern audiences were also mad at her for stealing the show from white star Katharine Hepburn in Alice Adams. She was also making headlines as the first black woman to sing on the radio in the US. She appeared in over 300 films, although she only received credit for 83 of them. Racial discrimination and segregation hounded Hattie everywhere. Even when she got her biggest role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind, Hattie was not allowed to attend the premiere of the film in Atlanta due to Jim Crow segregation laws in Georgia. Clark Gable threatened to boycott the event, but Hattie convinced him to attend the whites-only theatre. At the Oscars ceremony in LA, Hattie was sat at a segregated table at the very side of the room at the Ambassador Hotel, which was also a whites-only venue. Hattie was allowed in as a favour. Hattie won the 1940 Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, the first black actor to win an Oscar. While many black people were happy over Hattie's victory, they also viewed it as bittersweet, believing Gone with the Wind celebrated the slave system and condemned the forces that destroyed it. It suggested that only those who didn't protest Hollywood's systemic use of racial stereotypes could find work and achieve success. The discrimination continued after the award ceremony as her white co-stars went to a no blacks club where Hattie was denied entry. It would be another 50 years before a black woman would win an Oscar, Whoopi Goldberg for Ghost. Hattie continued to play maids, including in Disney's Song of the South in 1946. Her last film appearance was in Family Honeymoon in 1949, though she remained active on TV and radio in her final years. By spring of 1952, Hattie was too ill with breast cancer to continue working. Hattie married a total of 4 times, first in January of 1911 to Howard Hickman in Denver, Colorado. He died in 1915. Her second husband, George Langford, died of a gunshot wound in January 1925, shortly after they were married. Third husband, James Lloyd Crawford, was a real estate agent, and they married on March 21st, 1941 in Tucson, Arizona. During this marriage, Hattie suffered a false pregnancy and fell into a depression. She never did have any children. Hattie divorced James in 1945, saying he had been jealous of her career success. Her last husband, Larry Williams, an interior decorator, they married on June the 11th, 1949 in Yuma, Arizona, but divorced in 1950 after Hattie testified that their 5 months together had been marred by arguing and fussing, and that he tried to provoke dissension in her radio show cast and interfere with her work. In August 1950, Hattie suffered a heart attack and entered hospital in a semi-critical condition, and she was not discharged until October. Hattie died of breast cancer, aged 59, on October the 26th, 1952, in the hospital at Motion Picture House, California. Thousands of mourners turned out to celebrate her life and achievements. As a final act of discrimination, her request to be buried at Hollywood Cemetery on Santa Monica Boulevard was refused by the owner of the cemetery, as they would not accept the remains of black people for burial. She now lies in peace at her second choice Rosedale Cemetery. In 1999, Tyler Cassida, the new owner of the Hollywood Cemetery, offered to have Hattie reinterred there, but her family didn't want to move her. Instead, Hollywood Forever Cemetery built a large cenotaph on the lawn overlooking the lake, one of Hollywood's most popular tourist destinations. In 2010, Monique, winner of the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in Precious, thanked Hattie in her acceptance speech for enduring all that she had to so that I would not have to. So much respect for Hattie. So much respect. Our final person is Peg Entwistle, the girl that inspired the Meg film that the whole plot of this series centres around. On September the 16th, 1932, Peg Entwistle climbed a ladder to the top of the Hollywoodland sign, as it was known then. She stood atop the 50-foot-high letter H and leapt to her death. The shocking true story became the default analogy for the destructive nature of Tinseltown. Peg began acting as a teenager, booking consistent work on Broadway before she moved to LA, where she signed a one-picture deal with RKO to make her first movie, 13 Women. Peg's screen time was slashed from 16 minutes to 4, a major setback that Hollywood includes in Archie Coleman's fake script. But unlike Meg, she didn't have a concerned boyfriend chasing after her. Her marriage to the alcoholic and abusive Robert Keith had ended in 1929, and news of his remarriage, along with her professional disappointments, devastated the young actress. She passed away before 13 Women was even released. So, in summary, at first I was a little confused about the overly romanticised tone of the whole series, and I got the whole what if element, but I really wanted some real and tangible moments and reminders that not only was the discrimination then horrific, but it still occurs to this day. But then going away and researching the actual people's lives, now I kind of get it. Why not let these people have a make-believe alternative universe happy ever after? It's Hollywood, isn't it? The place where anything can happen, and if you just dream hard enough, then those dreams might just come true. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope you have learned something from it, and please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. Click the little notification bell so that you can get notified every time I upload a video. Go check us out on Instagram and Facebook under the Herstory Girls, and please do comment below and let me know which TV series, film, podcast, book, whatever you would like this historian to react to, and I will see you very, very soon in another episode of Herstory or a Historian Reacts. Keep well, keep safe. If I do not see you before, have the most incredible Christmas with your families. And it's been a really tough year, guys. Give yourself a pat on the back for getting through what has been a very tough, mentally draining, emotional year. There's been a lot of anxiety, there's been a lot of worry, but hopefully we can come out of this year knowing that what really matters is family and security and spending time with the people we love, and hopefully we can enter 2021 with a more positive mindset. So love from the Herstory household to you and yours, and I will see you in the new year. How very exciting. Mwah. Take care, and go and watch Hollywood if you haven't already. It's great, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.